Namaste everyone and welcome to my channel Sapna's Yoga Diary. Through this video I am starting a new series, and this is a yoga teaching skills series in which I'm going to share the best practices of yoga teaching that had worked for me. The idea came because lately I started getting a request from yoga teachers on teaching queries like sequence and your yoga teaching sequence, or how I engage students so that they don't feel bored over the period of time, etc. etc. In this video particularly, I'm going to share how I planned my first yoga class. That is, much before I started my first yoga class, what did I do to plan my yoga sequence? This is going to be very useful for new yoga teachers, also the existing teachers, to improve their yoga sequence, yoga class, and also the people who are moving to a new place and are unfamiliar with how yoga is being taught in that area. So if this theme interests you, stay with me till the end. So before I start, let me share a few things about me. I'm Sapna Rana Rawat and I am yoga teacher who's based in Dubai. So I learned yoga in India and I started teaching yoga in Dubai. So when I moved to Dubai. When I shifted here and when I started to think, basically I decided to teach yoga, there were a lot of questions in my head, as in how yoga is being taught here, whether chanting is included or not in the class, how will be the flow, how is the crowd in general, whether the whole instructions should be in English or can we include the asana's name in Sanskrit, etc. etc. So I decided to do market research and I decided to visit yoga studios, the popular yoga studios in their peak hours, so that I have the maximum students in the class and the best teacher possible, to see how the crowd is in general, how they are teaching attending the yoga students, and how the classes are in general. Thankfully that time Dubai launched their first Dubai Fitness Challenge, through which you are getting free yoga classes in the very popular yoga studios across Dubai. So I made use of that plan and I booked, I remember I went for 3 yoga classes, and they were far away from my place, but still I decided to go because I was very clear on my intention, that what I'm going to do, and I knew that is going to be useful for me. So much before you do this, if you also decide to do this kind of research, prepare a questionnaire. I had a clear questions in my head, that I want to know the flow, I want to know about the chanting, whether chanting is included or not. I wanted to know about the way people are giving instructions, how the flow is in general, etc. etc. Also, apart from these questions, there are 2 more things that you will important information that you are going to get from this kind of research. One, you will pick up the positive part of the teachers, the positive part of the practice, and 2, you will identify the gaps. Okay, these 2 are very important aspects. Now let me first talk about the questions that were running on my head. So I went to the 3 classes. I observed, I went there as a student, I had an experience as a student, and I listed down everything that I felt about the classes. And first thing first, I got all my answers. So for me it was very clear. I could see that I went for 3 classes, the chanting was optional. In few classes the teacher was chanting the mantras, and in other classes there was no chanting included. And I asked the teacher, why didn't you include the chanting? And he said that in Dubai, of course, there is a mixed crowd. Few people do not like to chant mantras, and basically to make everyone comfortable, they skip chanting, which made sense. So you had a perfect idea about mantra chanting. I also observed the flow. It was very fast paced than how we teach yoga, how I learned yoga in India. And you can take names in Sanskrit, that was absolutely okay, but the instructions in English has to be clear so that everyone understands it. People were coming from different cultural background, because in Dubai you see diversity, which is really good really. And so yeah, I got all the answers that I had in my head. Second thing was picking up the positive aspects from the class. So in those 3 classes, one thing which I still use is the engaging the people, by adding the partner yoga movements. So that this is basically one way of engaging more people, engaging the students in the class by and engaging the students also, so what you do, you make the pairs and then you give the kriyas and they do it together. So partner yoga. So that has been very helpful. I use it sometimes in my classroom. And now let's move on to the third thing, gap areas. That is the most important. So what I observed in general, as I said, the movement was very fast paced. So what it did, people who were familiar with the movements, for them it was very easy to follow, but for the people who were new like me, I felt it was very difficult to understand the flow and then follow the whole sequence. Second gap was the whole objective of the class, I felt, was to sweat. And at the end of the class, even after Shavasana, I felt I'm exhausted, because I felt the time of relaxation, that is the third thing, the time of relaxation was too short. I felt the body needed more time to relax. So not enough time for relaxation, third thing. Fourth thing, I felt there was no attention on the breath. Very minimum instruction was given on the breath flow, how you need to use the breath in different kriyas or movements. And then the next thing was how they were attending the latecomers. So I was 10 minutes late, and then after me also people were coming after 15 minutes or so, and they were just joining the flow. There was no separate instructions given to the latecomers. And no pranayam. So pranayam was also not there in all the 3 classes. I felt there was no pranayam. There was no pranayam, basically it was just asana. Okay, so that was the observation. And now I'm going to tell you how I use this observation in planning my class. So what I did, the gaps that I identified, I already got the answer, so I know whether to include the chanting or not, how to take, I'm okay to use both English and Sanskrit names. So that questions were answered. I knew the positive aspect of the class, I know how to use it. And then the last thing, gaps. The gaps that I identified, I made sure that the students in my class will not face those issues. Those gaps had to be filled. What I did is, so the first gap was the movement was very fast paced. That was my observation. So what I did is I planned my sequence in such a manner that will allow every student to practice those movements with the pace with which they are comfortable, which means that people who are comfortable, who are used to the fast-paced movements, will practice the movements in the fast-paced manner, because their body is open. But if you are not comfortable, you are new, your body is stiff, you can practice the same movement in the slow paced manner. So I gave that flexibility that will allow a new person to understand and follow the sequence with the pace with which they are comfortable, and the existing students to practice the same movements in the fast paced manner. So the pace was controlled. The second thing, the instruction on breath, that I think it is very important. So my practice, if you see, it is based on the breath. From the beginning till the end, I give the instructions on the breath, how you have to modulate the breath, how it is used in different practices. It is made very clear. So that has been my strength from the very beginning, and especially after attending those classes, I was very clear on emphasizing on the breath flow. Third thing, Shavasana was missing. I felt the time which was given for Shavasana was too less. So I dedicated 5 to 10 minutes depending on the sequence for Shavasana, and depending on the sequence and the intensity of the practice, I basically used to give time for Shavasana. So, and when I say Shavasana, it didn't mean just relax on the back. I also guide people in relaxation. So, it is a guided relaxation. And how guided relaxation helps, because people in Shavasana, what they do, their body relaxes but their mind is thinking. But when you guide them, when your voice is instructing them to do things that you want them to, they are engaged, you are engaged, and their total muscles deeply relax as you guide them in the Shavasana. So that's why I highly recommend the guided relaxation instead of just giving instruction that relax in Shavasana and rest your body. So yeah, that was one thing, and the other thing was addressing objective of the class. As I said, right, the objective of the class, as I observed, was to sweat, and at the end of the class the students feel exhausted. And in general, people have this tendency that if you're feeling pain, if you're feeling exhausted, that means, and if you have sweat a lot, you feel you have done a good workout. Yeah, but that is not true. So here the education helps. So when I used to take my classes in the beginning, of course now I don't need to say all this, but in the beginning I used to emphasize a lot on the myths of yoga, that if you are sweating much, it means that you are practicing really well, because had it been true, then everyone should have practice with sweaters or jackets on so that they can sweat more. But it is not the case. It means that it is not true. If you see my body type, I don't sweat much. In fact, I don't remember any day wherein I have sweat during my practice. I don't sweat at all when I practice yoga. But does that mean I don't practice enough? Absolutely not. So educate students on that area, and then at the end of the class, instead of after deep relaxation, after breathing practice, they don't feel tired, they feel energized, they feel relaxed. So the user experience, it changed. And the last thing was addressing the latecomers. When anyone come late in my class, I tell them, you have missed the beginning of the class, you have missed the warm-up. So dedicate 5 to 10 minutes in doing so and so kriya. So I give them a separate exercise, different kriyas, so that they can do a little bit of warm-up. And I also tell them at the end that not just them, but to the whole class, that if you come late, you are going to be at loss, because you are going to miss the beginning, and beginning sets the foundation of the class. Foundation of the practice, foundation of the flow. So don't miss it, because you are going to be at loss. And if you educate them right, they will be motivated to come on time. That's the job of a teacher, I feel. So yeah, that's how I used all the observation that I saw in the classes that I attended. So yeah, so that's how that helped me. That markets research that I did, it helps me even today. So that had been a very crucial step, and I highly recommend you do that before you take your first yoga class. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you liked it, do give me a thumbs up. And if you have any questions related to this video, or if you have any questions in general as a yoga teacher, you can put it in the comment section. I will answer it. Thank you so much for watching. Namaste.